Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at Bachmann's very exciting and all new NG7 narrow gauge range. So this has all happened extremely quickly. Obviously, Bachmann will have been working on this range for years and years at this point, but they only announced it publicly, a month ago? A couple of weeks, something like that. Before I know what's happening, the range is here and ready to go. So it's been really nice not to have to wait ages for all of these models to arrive, although of course we have had to wait for them, we just didn't know we were waiting for them, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Anyway, what is all of this about? So obviously Bachmann have been producing 009 narrow gauge models for quite a long time now. 009 is at 00 scale and the models are wonderful. They've been quite popular as I understand it, and I have reviewed quite a few of these items, and if you'd like to check out one of the Locos, I'll pop a link up there for you. NG7 is a little bit different though. Instead of being 00 scale, this is O scale, so it's 1 to 143.5, which is what sets this apart from ON30, by the way. So this is O scale narrow gauge, and one thing I've been struggling to get my head around is how large are these Locos going to be? It's been quite tricky to get a sense of the size of this stuff without actually seeing it in the flesh. And it is quite confusing because it's O scale, so it's double the scale of the 00 stuff, but the models that Bachmann have been producing in NG7 are tiny little things. They're not as large and chunky as the other O scale models that I've been looking at, and they don't even run on O gauge track, they run on 00 gauge track, but of course they're going to be much larger than any 00 models because they're twice the scale. So let me reveal the Loco that I'm looking at today. It is this, the Quarry Hunslet Britomart, and yeah, this is the size of it in comparison to my hand. And if I pull in the Dapple Hawthorne Leslie from last video, you can see that it's about the same size as that in terms of the length, but obviously it's taller because this model has the enclosed cab. And all of Bachmann's NG7 locomotives are Quarry Hunslets at the moment, I believe, although there's quite a few different liveries on offer, including some versions of this that don't have the enclosed cab. And if you're interested in these models, I will pop an affiliate link in the description for you. So in terms of price, I do think on first glance at least, having not seen the model yet, that these seem frightfully expensive. So the RRP for this locomotive with the enclosed cab is £214.95, and I picked this up from a retailer rails for £182.70. Now compare that with some of the other models that I've been talking about recently, the Accurascale Class 60 for example, which costs £169.99, and perhaps the Dapple Hawthorne Leslie, which is around £75 cheaper than this. So in comparison, yes, I do think this seems like an awful lot of money. However, you've got to think this is all new, it's going to be quite niche, there's not going to be as many people buying these as there are the Dapple Hawthorne Leslie and certainly the Accurascale Class 60, so the price has got to be a little bit higher to make this worthwhile for Bachmann. And I think that is a good justification from Bachmann's point of view, but of course we the customers don't really care about that. We customers just care about what we're actually getting for our money and whether or not it's worth it, and that's what I want to talk about today. So we'll be taking a look at this Loco. I've also picked up some of the rolling stock, and here it is. There are 3 different wagons available at the moment, each of them in a couple of different liveries, but I've just gone for the Dinorwic Grey. So we've got the slate wagon without the sides, which is the cheapest of the models at £21.95 RRP or £18.65 at the retailers. And then of course there's the slate wagon with the sides, and this also comes with a slate load, and these are more expensive at £25.95 RRP or about £22 at the retailers, £22.05 to be more specific. And then they've also got a coal wagon, which is very similar to the slate wagon, but it's got sort of walls instead of openings where you can see the slate behind them. And these are the same price, £25.95 RRP and £22.05 at the retailers. So these seem quite reasonably priced, I think, especially compared with the locomotives. But then again, looking at these, they do seem like pretty simple pieces of rolling stock. So again, value for money will be a bit of a question with these. But anyway, very exciting. This is all new stuff. I've not experienced any of this before, obviously. So let's get this out and let's see what this is like. All right, so 4 brand new items. This is very, very exciting. I think we will start with the most interesting, arguably, of the products, and this is the locomotive. And already through the front of the box, this thing looks gorgeous, really gorgeous, and I can already see some very high quality looking features on this, so can't wait to give this a look. Let me show you the end of the box then. So the product code for this is 71-026. It is the Quarry Hunslet 040 tank, Britomart, Penner Orseth Quarry, I think that's how you say it, maybe. And these are DCC ready with a next 18-pin DCC socket on board. And I suppose it's this sort of thing that will make an interesting difference between this NG7 range and the 009 range. They're quite a bit larger, so there's a bit more room inside for more features such as lighting, slight spoiler alert, speakers, DCC sockets, etc. Yeah, really interested to see what's inside this thing. But first we've got to see what the thing looks like on the outside. So with that, let's open up the box, which is lovely, by the way. I like the window in the front. We've got a nice clamshell on the inside, and also I can see lots of accessories too. So yes, an interesting product for sure. So there's that. The instructions, I thought for a second we had no instructions then, but yeah, there's a piece of card in the back, and behind that we have a booklet. So, Quarry Hunslet 040 tank, owner's information. So, locomotive information, it's got a coreless motor. I don't think that's a big surprise. As we've seen, next 18 decoder sockets in here. You can also get sound fitted examples, which are available too. Speakers, factory fitted to all models, very nice. Here we go, look, lighting features, firebox glow and flicker, orange LED only on DC control, all-wheel pickup, no big surprise. Running in accessories, looks kind of similar to in 009. We've got alternative buffers by the looks of it, large buffer blocks, small buffer blocks. We've got standard couplings, hoop couplings, chopper couplings. Blimey, we'll have to look into all of this then. And then there's also a toolbox which you can fit if you want. I suppose what you get in the accessories bag will depend on the specific model. Fireman's tools, I mean, these are extras that really make a model seem better value, aren't they? Anyway, lubrication, yeah, simple lubrication points on the axles and crank pins. DCC and sound decoder fitting. This is interesting. So the body is screwed on by the looks of it. Yeah, 4 screws. There's a quick look at the chassis, only in diagram form, but you can see where the speaker goes, the DCC socket, and also that must be where the lighting is at the back. No view of the motor at this point. Will it have a flywheel? Are we talking that kind of quality? We shall see. More on the firebox glow and flicker, and that is about it. So let's move all this out the way, and let's start by taking a look at the accessories, which are on the bottom. And crikey, there's a lot to go at here, isn't there? So let me pull this out and see what we've got. So the first thing I notice is that these use the standard NEM pockets for 00 scale. And I think that makes sense. Hopefully that means you can pop a tension lock coupling onto these logos and haul some 00 scale rolling stock. Obviously that wouldn't be very realistic, but it would be fun. These are not tension locks though. We've got the hook and loop style coupling, which are a bit like what you see in Europe in HO scale. And then we've got one of those NG7 couplings that was mentioned. We've also got couplings fitted to the Loco, which we'll look at later on. I'll try and use those if they suit the couplings on the rolling stock. And then there's also, I guess I will call this a coupling blanking plug, which has just got a bit of red buffer beam on the end, and you can put that in if you don't want any of the NG7 couplings. We've also got the fireman's tools in there, and also a toolbox as promised. And then on the back of here, oh, look at this. You see, this is a very expensive model, but you can tell that they're really trying to give you everything they possibly can for that money. So we've got beautifully high quality etched name and builder's plates here. Look at the quality of those. And because this is a bit larger than 009, these parts are of a reasonable size so that you can enjoy them, and it also means that the quality of them can be good as well, and they do look great. So that's all well and good. Let me put this back, but I want to see the Loco now. So I've read that the bodies of these Locos are just injection molded plastic, which I think does seem a pity for how much these cost. However, is the weight of these going to be decent? Let's find out. And what does it look like? What's the quality of the finish like? Oh, wonderful. So I believe that's a plastic body, if what I've read is correct, but the finish on it is quality, as you'd fully expect from Bachmann these days. Yeah, that is just sublime looking. And already I think this model is going to be more enjoyable, if possible, than the 009 ones, because it's just a bit meatier. You know, there's just that little bit extra room for those details. I just think it's easier to appreciate the real thing by having a slightly larger model of it. So let's lift this up for the first time and let's see what the weight is like. All right. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't feel particularly heavy when you lift it up. In fact, it's pretty obvious straight away that this is quite a plasticky model, particularly where the bodywork is concerned. The chassis on the inside, yeah, that is metal, so it's not a feather light Loco or anything. But yeah, it's perhaps not quite as hefty as you might expect, given how much this cost. However, that only seems to be affecting the weight of the model, because visually it looks perfect. I can't see any warping to the running plate. The finish is all great. So yeah, I don't really have any major complaints about that, other than the question of value, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, this is gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. Very expensive. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm still not convinced on the value side of this. But in terms of a model on its own, in its own right, it's hard to argue. I mean, that is gorgeous. And I will take a much closer look at this in just a second. And I'll weigh it too, to let you get an idea of how this compares with 00 and also 009 models. But there's more to look at. We've got some rolling stock here. So let's start by taking a look at this. I guess I'll start then by looking at the cheapest of these wagons, and that is the flatbed slate wagon. So let's start with that. Let me show you the end of the box to begin with. So this is 73-025A. It is the Dinorwick slate wagon in the grey, and I've actually got a review of the 009 version of these models on the way soon. So I'm not going to go into masses of detail today on these, but I will briefly show this. So these models do come with instructions, which is unusual, isn't it? And this is owner's information, although it appears to pertain just to the couplings. So this has got hook and loop couplings fitted. It's got chopper couplings as an accessory, and also a bit about how to couple to a locomotive, which of course I will try later on. I assume all of them are going to have those options, so I will just go into more detail here. And in the accessories bag, we have what I assume going on those instructions are the chopper couplings. Although these are not NEM in the same way that the ones on the Loco were NEM. The socket on these seems to be more similar to that of the 009 rolling stock. And I guess they've done that because these wagons are much smaller than the Locos. So to have large NEM pockets on them would probably spoil them visually. But anyway, let's open this up and take a look. Yeah, we got some nice planking on the top there. Let's pull this out. And here it is up close for you. Perfectly good looking wagon, but shocking value for money. Almost £20 for this does seem like a lot given how basic this is. No separate parts, it's literally just a flatbed. It's perfectly well made, it feels nice and heavy. The chassis is die cast, but it really is very, very basic for the money, isn't it? That's totally reasonable. I'm not expecting vacuum pipes and sprung buffers on it and loads of brake rigging and stuff. No, obviously that would all be completely inappropriate. But yeah, even though this is a niche product that is not going to be selling as many units as a BR mineral wagon, it does seem like quite a lot to pay for this, doesn't it? But yeah, nothing wrong with it. It looks perfectly good. Let's take a look at the next wagon then, which is this. This is the slate wagon with the slate load. Let me show you the end of the box. So if you're interested in this one, it's 73-027A, Dinorwic slate wagon with the sides, and this is great with the load. And I think each of these wagons are available in a maroon livery as well. I've just gone with the grey ones though, but that's up to you of course. Let's pull this one out then. So this one is slightly more expensive, but not by a huge amount. This one ended up costing me £22 instead of £18.65 as the one without the sides did. And there we go. And I like this better already because there's obviously just a bit more to it. We've got this lovely slate load. And as a result, this is quite a hefty wagon, and the slate load here is removable and it's made of resin, so there's good weight to that. And yeah, it's a lovely wagon this, more substantial than the flatbed, even though it is actually the same wagon on the bottom half. It's just got this basket-like top to it, which is lovely. Yeah, beautifully moulded and finished off beautifully with the slate. And yeah, same chassis and couplings. Lovely. Okay, one more wagon then, and this is the coal wagon, which I'm not sure whether it's got a load or not. Let me check the end of the box. This is 73-029 Dinorwic coal wagon, grey, well, with load. Okay, so yeah, this does have a load, presumably a coal load. So let's have a look. Same couplings again, yada yada yada. Not going to go into that. Don't want this video to take the next month for you to watch, but there it is. Can't really see much of it. Let's open this up. Yeah, sure enough, beautiful coal load. And obviously it's in scale with the coal that you'd see in 00 scale. Okay, lift this up. And yeah, another lovely item of rolling stock. The coal load too is actually resin. This is not a plastic piece. And the detail in that load is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, a lot of people don't like the plastic coal loads. They like to replace them with crushed coal. Well, I can't see you doing better than this with crushed coal, really. That looks great. And yeah, the wagon's actually not quite the same as the slate wagon, just with the sides filled in. It appears to be a little bit different, but equally nice to see some variety here as well. And it also means that you don't have to have slate trains. You can haul coal on your railway if you want to, which is nice. So I don't think I'll bother showing these wagons up close. I'll show these to you again when I get them running. But obviously we do need to take a closer look at the locomotive, which I'll do now after a little bit of background information on it. Quarry Hunslet 040 Britomart was one of many 040 saddle tank locomotives built by the Hunslet Engine Company for the slate quarries of North Wales. The locomotives were intended to be lightweight but equally capable of hauling their cargo reliably even during poor weather. This example Britomart was built in 1899 and she was used at the Penaroseth Quarry in Wales. I apologise profusely for that. She was one of countless narrow-gauge steam locomotives to be used at the quarry over the years, and she was in service there for many years until eventually in 1965 she was bought for preservation. To date, she is part of the Festiniog fleet, where she's used for footplate rides. That would be very enjoyable, and she also appears on various special occasions. So there she is, Britomart, up close and personal for you, and what a tremendous looking model this is. It is absolutely beautiful. Every detail looks 100% perfect. A genuine work of art. I love this thing. However, one thing I don't like is the plastic construction, because as great as this looks, in the hands it feels like plastic tat. It's extremely lightweight, and if customers are expected to pay over £180 for this, I think for me that is a problem. So the weight of this is 123 grams, and to put that into perspective for you, that is less than a Hornby Smoky Joe. That's right, this £180 model weighs less than a Smoky Joe. But it gets worse than that, because it's actually even less than a Hornby Ruston, which is significantly cheaper, the 88DS. Yep, the 88DS, much heavier and therefore much more powerful than this £180 NG7 Loco. And just to kind of put the icing on the cake, even the Hornby Peckett is quite a bit heavier than the NG7 Quarry Hunslet because of the die-cast construction. So as I've said, I understand why these NG7 Locos need to be quite expensive. But at the same time, if Bachmann are expecting customers to pay over £180 for this thing, making the body all plastic and making it feel so cheap and light really stings, I think. Particularly after the last review I did, which was the Dapol Hawthorne Leslie, which was almost all made of metal. That model is so much heavier than Britomart, and it was about £75 cheaper. So yeah, that is my one complaint really for this model. It is incredibly light, and I don't really understand why they've done that. And what makes this even worse is that the 009 Quarry Hunslet by Bachmann was so much better quality. That model was almost all made of metal, which makes that feel like a much higher quality Loco than this new one, which I don't think is a great look for Bachmann. But I think the quality of this model is only poor as far as the build materials are concerned, because the build quality of this model is genuinely fantastic. It is a gorgeous model. It is a very, very well detailed model. So in terms of the way it looks as opposed to the way it feels, I think you actually do get what you pay for here. So let's talk about the decoration then, which is very complex for a small Loco. Beautiful lining on the tanks, as you can see. The frames are also lined. That looks gorgeous. We've also got the lining on the side of the cab, as well as the printed builder's plate there, and of course there is a much higher quality etched one available in the accessories pack for you to fit. Same with the Britomart plate here. Nothing wrong with this print at all, but the fact that you've got an etched one to fit if you want is a real bonus. The other thing to mention is the finish. Yeah, gorgeous satin finish. Looks almost just like the real thing after it's had a wash perhaps. Absolutely wonderful. Painted cylinders with lining on them, look at those. We've also got the buffer beams painted into the red, which looks great. A very convincing looking metal band on the chimney here. Look at the quality of the paint there, and actually the top of the chimney here is a turned metal piece, so there is a little bit of metal work on this model after all. My absolute favourite aspect of the decoration here though is the metallic effect paint that they've used. Look at all of these metal components. These are not metal, these are plastic as far as I can tell, but they look tremendous. Same with the whistle. They can't really turn whistles like this out of metal because it's got pipework attached to it. So it has to be moulded in plastic, but then when they use paint that looks as good as this, the effect is astonishing, and Bachmann are the best in the industry for making these plastic parts look like metal. Absolutely amazing, and the same is true inside the cab as well. They've really cracked it. I mean, I don't know if the paint they use is a secret. I don't know whether they've developed a paint that looks this good, but I don't see other manufacturers using paint that looks as astonishingly realistic as this, and I think they quite urgently need to figure out what it is so that they can do it as well. Okay, let's talk detail then, because again, this model is insane. Let's start at the bottom. Yeah, beautiful frames, great moulding here. We've got the cranks, coupling and connecting rods outside the frames, which I like very much. And these parts are all cast in metal and they look wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Cylinder drain cocks pre-fitted, very nicely detailed buffer beams. No buffer blocks provided with this model, but that is correct for Britomart. We've also got the vacuum pipes here on the front and also on the back. Yeah, it's strange seeing vacuum pipes that are as large as this because it very much feels like a 00 Loco, but of course it's not, it is O scale. Sticking around the back, we've got a very nicely separately fitted lamp bracket here, which is great. And the window frames are also very realistically painted. Look at the riveting on those frames, absolutely fantastic. Everything about this model is so well done. We've got the wire handrails here, which are unsupported at the front, but look how perfectly straight those are. That looks fantastic. We've got the smoke box door with the handle separately fitted on it. Lamp bracket above there, again, absolutely can't fault it. And then the lid to the tank or the filler cap, that appears to be a separate part, and that, like the rest, is beautifully fashioned. We've got the springs just in front of the boiler here. Nice moulding on those actually. And then around the other side we've got real metal pipe work. Well, it's not a pipe, I assume it's wire, but yeah, that is copper, so it looks like copper. Surprise, surprise. Just a real quality touch, that. And of course around this side we've also got the separately fitted reverser rod and such. Okay, let's talk cab then, because this cab is next level. So let's take a look at some of the components here. We've got the safety valves, absolutely fantastic, and they connect up to the roof of the cab again, where there's more of this fantastic metallic paint. Separately fitted regulator, and look at the gauges here on the front of the firebox. We've got what looks like transparent acrylic here, so that the gauges have that realistic transparency. We've seen that in 00 scale before, but not for a long time, so great to see that back here. Look at all the different components and such, fantastic. Noticeably though, the window frames don't look as good as we saw on the dappled Hawthorne Leslie. Yeah, they look great on the outside, but on the inside, not so much, not as convincing, which is a shame given how good the rest of the cab is. One confusing thing is that we've read on the instructions about how there is a firebox glow on this model, yet the firebox is modelled in the closed position, so how on earth is this going to illuminate? Well, the answer is, what would you do in real life if you wanted to see the fire? Of course, you'd have to open the firebox door. And yeah, indeed, you can do that here on the model. It's a little bit awkward to do it on camera, and as you can see, yes, this opens up, and only then would you see the firebox flicker effect. So you could close that if you didn't want to have that effect visible, and that's another option that Bachmann have given to you, the modeler. I love that, how awesome. So there you have it, a close look at Britomart. A beautiful model. I mean, visually this thing is astonishing. I can understand why it should be quite expensive, and I think the price makes sense when you consider how complex yet niche this model is. It's just the weight that really lets this down for me. If only the running plate or perhaps the tanks were made of metal, if they were die cast, that would make the Loco feel more quality. It would be nice and heavy, it would be able to haul more, and then, you know, this £182.70 model would no longer be compared unfavourably with a Hornby Smoky Joe. Yeah, not a great look that, but otherwise a tremendous model. So with that, let's get this down onto the track. Let's see how it runs. Let's take a look at the mechanism, and let's see if this behaves like a £182.70 locomotive should. Alright, so there she is down onto the track. What an absolutely gorgeous model this is. And I've already filmed the performance test and running in, and I'll show you how that went in just a second. Now though, I want to talk about the mechanism. So I've just filmed the insides of this model, and here it comes now. So the base is held on with screws, which is nice, typical from Bachmann really, but worth pointing out. No clips here, and it is fully removable, connected to the chassis with sprung contacts. And this Loco uses wiper pickups, which are nice and easy to clean, and pulling the base off this gives you easy access to those. And there's also the couplings attached to this base keeper plate as well, which is interesting. On the axles there are proper separately fitted bearings, which is quality, that's great to see, and it is the rear axle that's driven and geared, just as the real Locos are powered via the rear axle as well. So the body is attached very firmly with 4 screws, so that's quality, no clips here either. I do like the way this has been designed, and with the screws out you can lift the chassis out of the body, and the chassis itself is die cast. This is one of the few parts of the model that is, but this is where most of the model's weight comes from. And I also noticed that the crank assemblies, these are all metal as well. So again, quality, and these are going to last as well. They're not going to fail or break as plastic ones would. So it's good to see that some money has been spent on quality components here. We've got a next 18-pin DCC socket here, which is easy to access, although there is no speaker here on the circuit board. That's a confusing one, isn't it? There's pads there for it. The speaker is actually fixed to the inside of the Loco body, as you can see there, and then the contacts just touch the circuit board when the body's fitted. So that's pretty interesting, but it also means you can't test the sound without the body on. So do bear that in mind if you'd like to chip your Locos and then test them before you put the body back on. You won't be able to do that with sound with this Loco. And then at the back where the firebox is, we've got 2 LEDs, a red and an orange one, and you'll see these in action in just a second. I did want to take a look at the motor, so I removed this board, which was held on with 4 screws, and we've got a very substantial and quality looking coreless motor here. But weirdly, there is no flywheel fitted to this, which is strange because when I saw this perform, I would have sworn there was a flywheel here because of the way it glides to a halt without just stopping dead. So I can only assume that the mechanism here is extremely free running, because it really glides to a halt as it would with a flywheel. I have to say though, it's a pity there is no flywheel fitted here, because if it had one it would glide even better over the points and such, and that would improve its reliability. But either way, quality motor, I like to see that. And then the back-to-back gauge, slightly different for each axle. One of them was 14.4, the other was 14.3 millimeters back-to-back, but that's still pretty close to the standard, so no issue there. So it's really good to see no expense has been spared on the mechanism. It's quality, it's serviceable, and it also appears to be built to last, which is great. So with that, let me jump back in time and let me show you that first performance test. Right, so it's a rough time for 040s at the moment because of course Dapol have just released their Hawthorne Leslie tank engine, which was an absolute masterclass in 040 performance. So this has got a lot of boot to fill if it's going to be anything close to as good as that Dapol Hawthorne Leslie, but let's find out. I'm open to being impressed. Forwards direction, let's give this some juice for its first ever run. Here we go. Beautiful. Seems gorgeously smooth, and that motion on the outside just looks great. I suppose because it's O scale, it's just got a bit of weight to it. On the N gauge track with the 009 ones, the rods just look like little bits that are flicking around as the thing runs. Here though, they seem to have some weight to them and they just move beautifully. It's funny how you notice these little things, isn't it? Of all the things to notice. But yeah, that's what struck me. Anyway, what's the gearing like? Let's go past at half power, see what that's like. Ooh, speedy. I suppose if you really floored it, to use a car term, I suppose one of these could go that quick, but what does it look like at full speed? Yeah, I mean, I can't really see a real thing going as quick as that, which is not a problem as long as this can crawl well, because it is the crawl that is most important with locos like this, because they did a lot of shunting. So let's see. Obviously I'll let this run in fully before I judge the performance finally, but let's see what it's like straight out of the box, turning up. Is it going? Yeah. This is 2 for 2. First the Hawthorne Leslie, and then this. I'm turning it up, turning it up. Oh, that's mightily, mightily impressive, Bachmann. Well done. Oh, that's stunning. I love this thing. Good Lord, we are spoilt, aren't we? We are spoilt rotten these days. Right, I believe in NG7 now. I think this could work as a scale. Imagine this on a proper NG7 layout, which is unfortunately not something I can show you, amongst lovely scenery, some of which Bachmann have produced already, fully detailed, maybe running around a little quarry, perhaps running around an O-scale Festiniog, something like that. This is just, there's going to be nothing finer than that, is there? What a beauty. It looks great and it runs well too. And the wheelbase, I would predict, is quite a bit larger than that of the Hawthorne Leslie. Here on 00 track, of course, not so much in real life. So that begs the question, how is this going to fare slowly over express points? If the wheelbase is larger than the dead zone, then it might not cut out. So let's see, that's a slow speed. Let's follow it. I'll tell you when the dead zone's coming up. Dead zone's here. Will it stop? Yes, it will. Okay. Well, so did the so did the Hawthorn at the slow speeds. Let's see if it does at 50. 50 is quite quick for this, I reckon. No, no stoppage there. 40. No, no stoppage there. 30. No, fine. 20. Yeah, just stops at 20 there. So just cutting out on express points. Obviously, is it fair to expect this to run perfectly over express points? No, so no big deal. I do think it fares quite well, and obviously I've not looked at the mechanism yet, but I reckon there's a flywheel here. I'm going to cut it off in front of you, and you'll see that demonstrated. Ready? Cut off. Yep, definitely a flywheel in there, because there's no mass to a coreless motor armature, so there's got to be a flywheel. That's my prediction. Well, you guys will know already if that's the case. But apart from over express points, which is kind of irrelevant anyway, the performance of this is just stunning. So I'm going to set this off around the layout. I think first what I'm going to do is just bring this to my passenger footbridge, bring it to my bookcase, just to check that it's going to fit underneath them, and if not, I can make some changes before I set this off and it just crashes into them and breaks off the chimney or something. So I'll do that, but for now let me just symbolise starting running in. Here we go. Let's see how it gets on. Alright, so height wise it seems to respect the 00 scale loading gauge quite nicely. It is quite a wide Loco though, so if you are going to buy this to just enjoy it on a 00 scale layout, check your station platforms, just make sure it's not going to foul against those, because like I say, it is quite a wide Loco compared with 00 scale ones. But as you can see on my layout, it's actually not colliding with anything that I've got here. So there's a good chance you can buy one of these Quarry Hunslets in NG7 scale to enjoy on your 00 scale railway. Obviously that's not dreadfully realistic, but if you just enjoy the engines and you don't want to build an NG7 layout, but you still want to give them a try and enjoy running them and owning them, yeah, there's a good chance that this is going to be something you can do. But yeah, performance-wise, this is lovely. It is fast. Yeah, it does seem pretty speedy for a Quarry Hunslet, and I believe the same was true of the 009 version. I think to mention Dapol again and their Hawthorn Leslie, the gearing on that Loco actually did seem to be more sensible. However, it's not a big problem because, as we saw, the crawl here was just incredible. Even on analog, really can't fault the way this crawls. So I suppose the only downside to this running fast is that you've got its entire realistic range of speeds within about the first 40% of a turn of the control knob, which isn't the greatest, but equally it's not really that much of a big deal, but I'll talk about it because I talk about everything. But no, this is running beautifully. The firebox LED is working. Unfortunately, there is no flickering on analog, so it just comes on steady. Again, I think Dapol have beaten Bachmann technically on that, because of course theirs does flicker on analog, and I also noticed that it starts lighting up at very low power too. So analog users get the full benefit of that effect. On this Loco it's not quite as good, but there is the facility for flickering built into this model, but to get it you have to run this on DCC. But there we have it, running beautifully, no problems at all, even on a 00 scale layout. A beautiful, beautiful Quarry Hunslet. So I'll let this run in fully, and then I'll bring the Wagons back, and we'll see how this performs with a bit of a load. Alright, there we go, running in complete. Yeah, it's a fast runner, but a faultless one. Not one issue as this ran along. I'm really surprised though that this doesn't have a flywheel. I mean, let me cut it off in front of you again, and we'll get that flywheel effect. Cut off. Yeah, look at that. So no flywheel, light armature in the coreless motor. Still somehow it's got inertia to carry on running like that when power is cut. That is a great sign of a quality mechanism. Anyway, what is the performance like now that this is run in? Let's do a bit of a torque test, because I've never tried that before. Coreless motors are usually good at this, and yep, look at that. Can I slow down? Yeah, look, it can even go slow with an obstruction. So yeah, great torque, loads of power. That's really good. In fact, it's a shame the Loco is as light as it is, because if it was heavier, it would be much more powerful. As it is, the tractive effort is 0.18 newtons, which is about 14 coaches in 00 scale. So not the most in the world. Obviously, pulling power is not massively important with this Loco, but it would have been nice to see this able to haul a little bit more. But anyway, let's try that crawl again, because it really was fantastic. Here we go. Ease it up slowly. Oh, it's gone already. Yeah, it is a quick one. You've got to be very, very precise on the controller. But let's see. There we go. I think I got it in the sweet spot there. Yeah, that was insanely slow. Very good. Let's try it in reverse. Just see if we can get it as good in reverse. Here we go. Oh, it did stall there. So yeah, it's perhaps not quite as good as the Dapol Hawthorne Leslie. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the split chassis style pickup solution does seem to work better comparing these two Locos. But yeah, this is still very good. And let me say, try it at like a typical running speed for a Loco like this. Here we go. I mean, that is delightfully slow, isn't it? Lovely. So let's talk rolling stock then. So I've set up my 3 wagons, as you can see, and I've already done the Gordon's Hill rolling test. So the slate wagon without the load, the flatbed, this did pretty well, sailing right down towards the signal box, and the weight of this wagon is just 12 grams, which means the cost of this wagon is way over £1 per gram. And considering the model is very, very basic in terms of separate parts and decoration, that does seem frightfully expensive. Then up next, we've got the slate wagon with the load. And with the load, this comes in at 25 grams, so over twice the weight. Yeah, that's a bit more substantial for what it cost. And that did similarly well, perhaps not quite going as far, but yeah, still free rolling. And then the coal wagon comes in at 23 grams, and that was the best free roller of them all, going right down past the signal box. So they are nice and free rolling. In terms of couplings, I fitted a chopper coupling to the front of the flatbed, and that's so that it can couple up automatically to the Loco. The hook and loop style couplings fitted to the rolling stock are much smaller and more subtle. They certainly look better, but you have to couple these manually. You can't push the wagons together and have them couple automatically. If you want that, you'd have to use the chopper couplings between all of your wagons. And as you can see, yeah, these don't look the best. They're quite large and chunky. I think the hook and loop ones are the most realistic. But anyway, let me go and couple. Let's see how we get on. Here we go. Okay, let's take this steady. Slowly. Do we get it? Not really used to these couplings, so I don't know what to listen for. But yeah, it got them. So a successful coupling. Look at that. Okay, and let's take it away. Let's see how it looks with the wagons. Here goes. Let's go a bit more slowly now that it's hauling a bit of a train. Okay, let's see how this handles the layout at a slightly slower speed, coming up to the second radius now. Yeah, and as you can see, the torque in the mechanism there really shines through. No slowing down. Obviously, it's not got much of a load at the moment, but even so, with, well, 4 or 5 times as many wagons, I can't see this struggling too much, at least on a relatively flat layout. So yeah, the performance is fantastic. I mean, it's only an 040, there's only so much that can go wrong, but it is beautifully smooth, it does crawl well, it is as reliable as you could expect, over express points even, so no problems with that. And the wagons work great as well, they're nice and free rolling, the couplings seem to work well for what they are. Yeah, in terms of everything in this range that I've seen doing what it says on the tin, it all does that. It's all perfectly functional, it all works great. In terms of value for money though, that's still a question mark for me. I mean, this train that you're looking at here, 1 Loco and 3 wagons, cost me just over £245 at retailer prices. I think that's quite a lot of money for what you get here, particularly given that the Loco weighs less than a Hornby Smoky Joe. So yeah, the high price is definitely something to consider if you're looking at this NG7 range by Bachmann. I think possibly, you know, if it gets established and Bachmann see sales go up, then possibly we'll start to see the prices coming down. Maybe not though, it is Bachmann after all, and prices coming down is not something we see a lot of from that company. But yeah, in terms of the models themselves, they look great, they work well, but you do pay very dearly for them. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this, and I certainly will be keeping an eye open for what else Bachmann produces in NG7, because these models are really enjoyable. What lovely things to run. Let's have some ratings then for Bachmann's NG7 range, and I'm going to focus mostly on the Loco with these ratings. So, level of detail has to be 5-star. This is a gorgeously presented locomotive, and the wagons too are fantastically presented. Top-notch decoration and finish. I don't need to say any more than that because it's clear how wonderfully painted this model was. But I do want to mention again that brass paint that was used on the whistles and other metallic parts. That just looks stunning. Other than that, we've got etched plates provided with this model. We've got a massively detailed cab, that's amazing, with cab lighting. I mean, you name it, if the real thing's got it, this model's got it as well. Absolutely amazing. Performance, I'm actually not going to fault it. Yes, it does run quite fast, but it's also got the slow speed performance that you need for a Loco like this. So yes, it is fast, but it can also do the realistic speeds. So I'm not going to fault it for that. The crawl is fantastic. It handles even the worst of my points without too much of a problem. In fact, it won't even stutter at the higher speeds, which is great. Couplings work fine. Yeah, it's just a 5-star, fantastic performance. The pulling power was not the best because of how light the thing is, so it comes out at 0.18 newtons, which is about 14 00 scale coaches. Yeah, that's not a lot really for quite a large Loco such as this in O scale. That's actually the same as the Rapido Lion in 00, which is obviously much smaller. Maybe that's not too much of a big issue, these wouldn't be hauling masses, but these Welsh quarries did have some inclines to them, and particularly the slate wagon that has the load, that is quite heavy because the load is made of resin. So if you've got lots of these slate wagons with the loads and you've got an incline, let's say, I can see the Loco possibly struggling with that. So not the greatest pulling power, a bit more weight I think would have served this well. The mechanism I've given 4.5 star, it's a truly fantastic mechanism this. Incredibly serviceable, you can get easy access to every part of the mechanism for servicing, which is great. Wiper pickups, nice traditional pickup solution, proper bearings, single driven axle, real quality coreless motor, which I like a lot, that performs brilliantly. Nice modern Next 18 DCC socket and even a pre-fitted speaker, so you don't have to faff around with that. The only downside is that there is no flywheel fitted to this motor, which is a shame because even the 009 Bagley Drury shunter had a flywheel in it. And even though this model does perform almost as though it's got a flywheel, I think if it actually had one, it would glide even better over the points and possibly perform better on them even at the slower speeds. So I've knocked it down by 0.5 star, but there's certainly nothing majorly wrong with the mechanism. It is good quality. Speaking of quality, generally speaking, the build quality of the model is top notch, particularly where the decoration is concerned. I didn't see any issues with that. All of these small components have been perfectly fitted, and there's a lot of them too on this model. It just can't get 5 star because of how plasticky this is. The body, the running plate, all of that, it's all plastic, and given the RRP of £214.95, that's unacceptable really. Why would they not give you a little bit more after you've spent so much on this Loco? So yeah, it's quite lightweight, quite plasticky. It does lose a star for that. Value for money then, I've just touched on that already, but £214.95 is the RRP. Typical retailer price is about £182.70. On the one hand, you do get a lot for your money here. There's a lot of features on this, a lot of details, a lot of quality too, to an extent. However, it's also a very small Loco, it's also very light, and it actually has no more features than, let's say, the Dapol Hawthorne Leslie had. and that was £75 cheaper, and I think even possibly slightly better as well. So yeah, this is a niche model. It's not going to have such a broad appeal as the likes of the Hawthorne Leslie and plenty of other models. However, if you are outlaying £180+ on this, you want to see that you've gotten what you pay for, and I think really this model is a mixed bag where that's concerned. I think the prices could have been better for what you get here, so I've given it 3-star. Overall though, that's still a great score of 8.32 out of 10. It is a wonderful model, all things considered, and that is a grade of B, which is pretty good. So into the logbook we go. I've put this into O scale because it is O scale. Not much to compare it to here, although I do have more O scale reviews coming soon, so hopefully I can fill this logbook up a little bit. Can I recommend this though? Well, if money's no object, absolutely yes. If you are on a tighter budget, possibly look into the 009 range instead. You can get these Locos in 009 and they're made of metal. They are slightly better quality, I would say. So there you have it then folks, that was my review of the Bachmann NG7 range, or at least a few key models from the range. And yeah, they are very enjoyable, well made I would say, nicely put together. The design in particular of the Loco is very pleasing, particularly where the mechanism's concerned. Yeah, overall very impressed. The biggest downside is the price of these, I think. Yeah, I've mentioned that quite a bit already. I suspect that the quantities Bachmann have produced of these models are much smaller than you'd see for a typical 00 scale model, and so the cost of development and production has been spread among fewer models, which probably explains why these cost more than they ought to when compared with 00 scale models. So that is something to bear in mind. These are not expensive because you get more for your money. They're expensive because they're niche, and Bachmann don't seem to be benefiting from the economies of scale with this range. And that may change in the future, it may not. But overall, I am pleased with this, and I will be interested to see what Bachmann does next. Can we expect to see the little Bagley Drury shunter? I would love to see that done in O scale. What an incredible machine that would be, particularly if the quality in NG7 matched the quality in 009, which was fantastic. But that's just speculation. Obviously, nobody knows what's coming next. Well, somebody knows. Bachmann employees probably know. But for the rest of us mortals, we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, that was the Quarry Hunslet and some of the Dinorwic Wagons. Thank you so much for watching. Comment down below, let me know what you think, and check out the affiliate links if you'd like to browse the range or possibly pick some of the models up. But for now, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.